If you think you've seen the most incredible wildlife rescue, wait until you hear what happened when a lone ranger found himself trapped between a baby elephant and a pride of hungry lions in the heart of the African savanna. The air was thick that morning, heavy, the kind of heat that makes you feel like the earth itself is holding its breath. James had been tracking poachers for 3 days straight through the northern sector of the reserve, moving through acacia thickets where the shadows stretched long and twisted across the red soil. His radio crackled with static, useless this far from the station. He was alone, miles from backup, armed with nothing but a rifle, a canteen running low, and the kind of stubborn determination that keeps a man walking when everything else tells him to turn back. The sun climbed higher, merciless and blinding. Sweat traced rivers down his neck, soaking into the collar of his khaki shirt. His boots crunched through dried grass that snapped like brittle bones underfoot. Somewhere in the distance, a fish eagle called out, its cry sharp and lonely against the endless sky. James wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and scanned the horizon, squinting against the glare. Nothing, just heat waves dancing above the plains, distorting everything into shimmering mirages. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong, high-pitched, desperate, cutting through the silence like a blade. James froze. His hand instinctively moved to the rifle strap across his shoulder. The sound came again, louder this time, more urgent. Not a bird, not a baboon. Something else. Something afraid. He moved toward it, pushing through a wall of thorn bush that tore at his sleeves and left thin scratches across his forearms. The ground sloped downward into a shallow ravine, the kind carved out by seasonal floods and forgotten by the rains. And there, at the bottom, caught between 2 massive boulders and a tangle of dead branches, was a baby elephant. The calf couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. Its skin was still soft, wrinkled like oversized clothing, covered in a layer of red dust that clung to the moisture around its eyes and trunk. One of its front legs was wedged deep between the rocks, twisted at an angle that made James wince. The little elephant thrashed weakly, trunk flailing, eyes wide with terror. Blood streaked down its leg where the rough stone had scraped away skin. James slid down the embankment, stones tumbling beneath his boots. The calf let out another cry, shrill and heartbreaking, and tried to pull away from him. Its ears flapped frantically, too large for its small head, and it swung its trunk in clumsy arcs, trying to defend itself against this new threat. "Easy," James whispered, voice low and steady. "Easy now." He approached slowly, hands visible, rifle slung across his back. The elephant's breathing was rapid, panicked. Its small body trembled with exhaustion. James could see the dehydration in its sunken eyes, the way its skin had lost elasticity. His baby had been stuck here for hours, maybe longer, without water, without its mother. And that thought sent a chill through him despite the heat. Where was the herd? Elephants don't abandon their young, ever. A mother elephant would tear through fire to reach her calf. The fact that this baby was alone meant something had gone terribly wrong. Poachers, lions, a stampede. Any number of tragedies that play out daily in the unforgiving theater of the wild. James knelt beside the trapped leg, examining the situation. The calf's foot was wedged deep, caught between 2 surfaces of granite that had probably shifted when it stepped wrong. The more it struggled, the tighter the grip became. He would need to widen the gap somehow, create enough space to slide the leg free without breaking bone or tearing muscle further. He unhooked his belt, then his shirt, tearing strips from the already tattered fabric. The elephant watched him with those impossibly expressive eyes, still afraid but perhaps sensing that this human wasn't there to hurt. James spoke continuously, a low murmur of reassurance that seemed to calm both of them. "I've got you. We're going to get you out." He wedged his shoulder against one of the boulders and pushed. Nothing. The stone was massive, embedded in earth and time. He tried again, feet bracing against the opposite rock face, every muscle straining. The boulder shifted. Just an inch. Maybe less, but it was enough. The calf's leg slipped free. Immediately, the baby elephant lurched forward, nearly trampling James in its panic. It stumbled, that injured leg buckling, and collapsed onto its side with a sound that was half cry, half grunt. James scrambled back, giving it space, watching as it tried and failed to stand. The leg wouldn't hold weight. Not yet. He approached again, this time with his canteen. The elephant's trunk reached out tentatively, exploring the air between them. James poured water into his cupped palm and held it out. For a moment, nothing. Then the tiny trunk dipped down, sucking up the water with a small, snuffling sound that was almost laughable in its vulnerability. James smiled despite everything. Despite the isolation, the heat, the growing sense that they were both in more danger than either of them realized. Because that's when he smelled it, musk, heavy and unmistakable. The scent of predators. His head snapped up, scanning the rim of the ravine. At first, he saw nothing. Just grass and scattered acacia trees silhouetted against the brutal blue sky. Then movement, a flicker of tawny gold between the shadows. And another, lions, not just one. A whole pride, 6, maybe 7, spread out along the ridge above them, watching with the patient stillness of creatures who know that time is always on their side. James's blood ran cold. His hand moved to the rifle, carefully. The baby elephant sensed his fear and pressed closer, its small body leaning against his leg, trunk wrapping around his boot in a gesture of trust that was almost unbearable in its innocence. They were trapped. No way up the steep ravine walls without turning his back on the lions. No way to carry an injured elephant calf that probably weighed 300 pounds. And no way those predators were going to leave without a meal. The largest lioness, her coat scarred from years of hunts and territory battles, took a single step forward. Then another, testing, calculating. Her golden eyes never left the calf. James raised the rifle, aiming at the sky, and fired a warning shot. The crack echoed across the savannah like thunder. Birds exploded from nearby trees. The lions scattered, but only for a moment. They regrouped 20 yards back, still watching. Still waiting. James had 3 rounds left, maybe 4. Not nearly enough. The sun beat down without mercy. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging and blurring his vision. The baby elephant made a small sound, somewhere between a whimper and a call. It was crying for its mother. Crying for help that wasn't coming. And James realized with terrible clarity that he was going to have to make a choice no ranger should ever face. His life, or the life of this helpless creature trembling beside him. The lioness took another step closer. But what happened next would change everything, in ways that no one, not even James himself, could have possibly predicted. Time became something strange in that ravine. Elastic and cruel. Seconds stretched into eternities, while minutes collapsed without warning. James's world narrowed to a circle of red earth, scattered stones, one injured elephant calf, and the slow, methodical closing of a predatory noose. The pride moved with eerie coordination. No sound, no rush. Just the patient redistribution of bodies around the rim of the ravine, cutting off every possible escape route. 3 lionesses to the north. 2 more to the east. A massive male, his dark mane matted with dust and dried blood, positioned himself directly above, his weight making small stones tumble down the slope. James kept his back to the largest boulder, rifle raised, finger near the trigger but not on it. Not yet. Every shot had to count. The baby elephant stayed pressed against his legs, occasionally reaching up with its trunk to touch his hand, his face, his shirt seeking comfort from the only solid thing in its terrifying new reality. The heat was becoming its own kind of enemy. James could feel dehydration creeping in, that cottony thickness in his mouth, the beginning of a headache pulsing behind his eyes. His canteen was empty. The calf needed water desperately. Its skin was turning gray, losing the healthy pink undertone. How long could a baby elephant survive in this sun without hydration? Hours? Less? One of the lionesses, sleek, younger than the others, probably eager to prove herself, began descending the slope. Her paws found purchase on the loose earth with perfect feline precision. She moved in that distinctive big cat way, shoulders rolling, head low, every movement calculated. 50 feet away, then 40. James fired. The bullet struck the ground 3 feet in front of her, throwing up a spray of red dirt. The lioness recoiled, snarling, lips pulled back to reveal canines the length of a man's finger, but she didn't retreat. She circled laterally, moving to a new position. 2 shots left. The male lion above released a low rumble. Not quite a roar, but something that vibrated through the ground. Through James's chest, straight into some primal part of his brain that remembered when humans were prey. The calf trumpeted weakly, its small voice cracking with fear. James's mind raced through scenarios, each one bleaker than the last. He couldn't outrun lions carrying an elephant. He couldn't climb the ravine walls with his hands full. He couldn't shoot them all before they closed the distance. And even if by some miracle he managed to kill one or two, the rest would tear them both apart. His only option was to wait for nightfall and pray that darkness gave him some advantage. But that was 6 hours away. 6 hours under the sun with no water. 6 hours for the lions to grow bold enough to test him seriously, and the calf might not last 6 hours. James pulled his radio from his belt and tried again, knowing it was useless. Static, just endless mocking static. They were too far into the backcountry, too deep in the hills where the signal couldn't reach. He was about to clip it back when an idea struck him, crazy, desperate, but possible. He switched the radio to emergency broadcast and began speaking, steady and clear, describing his location, the situation, coordinates from memory. Even if no one heard it now, the transmission would ping off any relay it could find, leaving a digital breadcrumb trail. Maybe. Possibly. If he was lucky and the universe decided today wasn't his day to die. The lioness who had descended began moving again, this time from a different angle. James tracked her with the rifle but held his fire. She was testing him, learning his range, his response time. Smart. These weren't desperate animals. They were strategic, experienced hunters who had likely brought down buffalo, giraffe, even young elephants before. Movement to his left. Another lioness, using her companion as a distraction. James swung the rifle toward her and she froze, yellow eyes locked on his. A standoff. He could feel the baby elephant's rapid heartbeat against his leg, could hear its labored breathing. The calf was fading, then something changed. The male lion on the ridge lifted his head, ears swiveling. The lionesses paused, their focus shifting from James and the calf to something beyond the ravine. James felt it too, a vibration through the earth. Faint but growing stronger, rhythmic, heavy, footsteps, multiple footsteps. The lions scattered back from the rim, regrouping in a defensive cluster. Their body language shifted from hunting mode to something more cautious, almost wary. James's breath caught in his throat as hope and fear warred inside him. What was coming? More predators? A herd of buffalo that might trample him just as easily as save him? The baby elephant began making sounds unlike anything James had heard from it before. Not cries of distress, but calls. Urgent, high-pitched, almost frantic calls that carried up and out of the ravine like an emergency beacon. And then, there silhouetted against the savage blue sky at the edge of the ravine, appeared a massive shape that made James's heart nearly stop. An elephant, full-grown. Female, her ears spread wide in a threat display that seemed to blot out the sun. Her trunk was raised, and she released a trumpet call that was nothing less than pure fury given sound. The blast of it echoed across the savannah, primal and unstoppable, the voice of a mother who had found her stolen child. The baby calf answered, voice breaking with relief and exhaustion and desperate hope. James felt tears sting his eyes, though he couldn't have said if they were from emotion or the dust and sweat running down his face. The mother elephant was here. She'd found them. Against all odds, against the miles and the heat and whatever chaos had separated them, she had tracked her baby to this exact spot. The lionesses backed away further, but they didn't flee. They'd been driven from kills before, knew that sometimes persistence paid off. The male lion held his ground, calculating. One elephant was formidable. One elephant defending young was deadly. But 7 lions against 1 elephant? Those were odds that hunger made worth considering. The mother elephant began descending into the ravine. Her massive feet found purchase on the slope, sending small avalanches of stone tumbling ahead of her. She was enormous, 9 feet tall at least, probably 6 tons of muscle and bone and maternal rage. Her tusks, yellowed with age and streaked with mud, were each as long as James's arm. She locked eyes with him. And James understood, in that moment of perfect clarity, that he was now caught between 2 forces of nature. The lions behind him. An enraged mother elephant ahead, the baby between them. He slowly lowered his rifle, letting it hang from its strap. Raised both hands palms out in a gesture of surrender as old as communication itself. He took 2 slow steps backward, moving away from the calf, giving space. The mother reached the bottom of the ravine with a final small landslide of earth and stone. She was even more massive up close, her presence filling the entire space with raw power. Her trunk extended toward her baby, who stumbled forward on 3 working legs, crying and reaching with its own small trunk. The reunion was brief, tender. The mother ran her trunk over her calf's body, checking for injuries. her eyes never leaving James. Then she positioned herself between her baby and the ranger, a wall of gray flesh and unmistakable warning. James understood. He backed up against the boulder again, making himself as small and non-threatening as possible. But the lions were getting restless. Opportunity was literally trapped in a hole in front of them. 2 elephants and an unarmed human. The pride began to spread out again, reforming their hunting pattern. The mother elephant turned her attention to them, ears flaring, releasing a low rumble that James felt in his bones. This was it. The moment where everything would either fall apart or somehow, impossibly, hold together. The largest lioness began her approach again, flanked by 2 others. Coordinated. Deadly. The mother elephant stepped forward to meet them, trumpeting another challenge. And James realized something that made his blood run cold. She couldn't protect both her calf and herself from a coordinated attack. The baby was too injured to run. The ravine was too enclosed for proper maneuvering. If the lions attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, something terrible was going to happen. He picked up the rifle again, not pointing it at the elephant, pointing it toward the lions. Choosing his side, the mother elephant glanced back at him, and James would swear for the rest of his life that he saw recognition in those ancient, intelligent eyes. Understanding. The lions closed in. And then against every instinct, every survival protocol, every rational thought, James stepped forward to stand beside the elephant, positioned between the predators and the calf. Mother and ranger, united, defending the innocent. What happened in the next 30 seconds would be talked about in ranger stations and wildlife documentaries for years to come. The world held its breath. 7 lions, 1 elephant, 1 human, 1 injured calf, all compressed into a ravine the size of a small room where nature's hierarchy was about to be rewritten. The first lioness lunged. James fired. The crack split the air and the bullet struck stone beside her head, the ricochet winding off into the distance. The lioness twisted away with a snarl, but her sister was already moving from the opposite side, low and fast. The mother elephant pivoted with surprising speed for a creature her size, swinging her massive head. Her tusk caught empty air as the lioness pulled back, but the message was clear. The elephant released another trumpet blast, this one less fury and more warning, the sound reverberating off the ravine walls until James's ears rang. Behind them, the calf whimpered. James risked a glance back. The baby had collapsed onto its side, breathing heavily, tiny trunk barely moving. It was shutting down. Dehydration and shock and injury combining into a fatal cocktail. They needed to end this. Soon. But the lions had tasted blood somewhere in their recent past. James could see it matted in the male's mane, and they were committed now. Hungry, desperate enough to risk the tusks and the trunk and the sheer crushing power of an elephant's foot. The male lion began his descent from above, massive paws finding the narrow path the mother elephant had used. He was enormous, 400 pounds of muscle and killing expertise, his presence changing the entire dynamic. With him added to the equation, the pride's confidence multiplied. James had 1 shot left. 1 bullet. He'd have to make it count or switch to the rifle as a club, and that was a losing proposition everyone knew. The mother elephant sensed the shift too. Her ears spread wider, making her appear even larger, and she backed up until she was nearly standing over her calf, forcing James to move with her. They were compressed now into the smallest possible defensive circle. No room to maneuver. No escape routes. 3 lionesses began moving simultaneously, the hunting tactic that had brought down prey for millennia. 1 from the left, 1 from the right, 1 straight ahead. Classic pincer movement. The mother elephant couldn't defend against all 3 at once. James made a split-second decision. He aimed at the ground in front of the center lioness and pulled the trigger. Click. Misfire. His heart dropped into his stomach. The rifle, battered, old, caked with dust, had jammed. The lioness heard the mechanical failure, saw his moment of panic, and accelerated her charge. The mother elephant moved faster than physics should have allowed. She swung her trunk in a wide arc, connecting with the lioness in midair and sending her tumbling sideways into the ravine wall with a sickening thud. The cat hit hard, slid down, and struggled to rise, dazed. But the other 2 were still coming. James dropped the useless rifle and grabbed a rock the size of his head. Primitive, desperate, probably futile. But he wasn't going to die passive. The lioness coming from his side gathered herself to spring. And that's when the calf did something that defied every expectation. Despite its injuries, despite its exhaustion, The baby elephant lurched to its feet, its small trunk raised, and it released a trumpet call, thin, cracking, impossibly defiant. The sound of a child protecting its protector. The charging lioness faltered. Just for a second, just long enough. The mother elephant's front leg came down like a sledgehammer, striking the ground inches from the lioness's head. The impact sent shockwaves through the earth. The predator scrambled backward, abandoning the attack. The male lion had reached the ravine floor. He circled slowly, weighing options. His pride was losing cohesion, the coordinated attack falling apart. 2 lionesses injured or dazed, the others hesitant. And this elephant, this mother, showing no signs of tiring or backing down. James grabbed his radio again, shouting into it with raw desperation. If anyone can hear this, GPS coordinates too. 5 south, 37.3 east, need immediate assistance, lion's elephant calf. His voice cracked. Static answered. But the mother elephant was doing something strange. She'd shifted her position, angling her body to create a barrier not just for her calf but for James too. She glanced at him again, trunk reaching out briefly to touch his shoulder, a gesture so deliberate, so clearly intentional that James felt the hair rise on his arms. She knew. Somehow she understood that he'd saved her baby, that he'd stood beside her when every survival instinct should have sent him running. That in this moment, human and elephant were allies. The male lion roared. Not a warning this time, but a call to regroup. The lionesses responded, pulling back to form a loose semicircle. They weren't leaving, not yet, but they were reassessing, calculating whether the effort was worth the risk. The standoff stretched. Minutes that felt like hours. The sun continued its merciless arc, heat radiating off the stone walls until the ravine felt like an oven. James's vision swam. His throat was sandpaper. Beside him, the mother elephant's breathing had become labored, flanks heaving. Even she had limits. The calf collapsed again. This time it didn't get up. Just lay there, eyes half closed, trunk barely twitching. Something broke in James. He'd been a ranger for 15 years. Had seen animals die in every way nature provided. But watching this baby slip away after fighting so hard felt unbearable. He stepped forward, past the mother elephant, toward the lions. Unarmed, exhausted, probably delirious from dehydration, but moving anyway, driven by something beyond logic. "Get back," he screamed, voice raw and ragged. He raised his arms, making himself bigger, and charged toward the nearest lioness. Pure insanity. "Get back." The lioness retreated a step, confused by this behavior. Prey didn't attack. Prey ran or froze or fought from defensive positions. This was wrong. This was unexpected. And the mother elephant trumpeted behind him, not in warning, but something else. Something that might have been encouragement. She moved forward with him, matching his advance step for step. Human and elephant. Moving together. Defending each other. The male lion's ears went flat. He'd never seen this before. Nothing in his genetic memory or learned experience prepared him for prey that coordinated, that unified. His tail lashed once, twice. Then he turned away. The lionesses saw their patriarch retreat and followed. Not running lions don't flee, but withdrawing with dignity intact, disappearing up and over the rim of the ravine in a fluid stream of tawny gold and muscle. They were gone. James collapsed to his knees, every ounce of adrenaline draining away in an instant. He gasped for air, hands shaking, vision blurring. The mother elephant moved past him to her calf, trunk exploring the small body with frantic gentleness. The baby wasn't moving. James crawled forward, exhaustion forgotten. He placed his hand on the calf's side, feeling for breath. They're shallow, barely present, but there. Still alive, he whispered. Still fighting. The mother elephant looked at him, really looked at him. And then she did something that James would replay in his mind for the rest of his life. She wrapped her trunk gently around his waist and lifted him to his feet, steadied him. Then she positioned herself beside her calf, and with her trunk began to guide James's hands, showing him where her baby was hurt, where it needed help. She was asking him, trusting him. James's throat tightened. He said, voice breaking, "Okay, I've got you. Both of you." He examined the calf's injured leg more thoroughly now. Swollen, definitely sprained, maybe fractured. He used strips from his shirt to create a makeshift splint, working carefully while the mother elephant watched every movement. Then he tried his radio one more time. This time, miracle of miracles, a voice crackled through the static. Copy that coordinates received, sending helicopter 20 minutes. 20 minutes. They had 20 minutes to hold on. James looked at the mother elephant. She looked back. And in that exchange was something that transcended species, language, evolution itself. Mutual respect, gratitude, partnership. The baby elephant stirred, making a small sound. Its trunk reached weakly for its mother. She responded immediately, touching it, soothing it, humming that low rumble that elephant mothers use to comfort their young. James sat down heavily, back against the boulder, and let himself finally feel the weight of what had just happened. The fear, the awe, the impossible beauty of this moment. The mother elephant moved closer, slowly, deliberately, and then impossibly gently for a creature with feet the size of dinner plates. She rested her trunk on his shoulder, a gesture of thanks. James closed his eyes, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on his face. "You're welcome," he whispered. "You're both so very welcome." The hump of helicopter rotors grew louder in the distance. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have predicted, was that the story was far from over. The helicopter appeared as a mechanical angel against the brutal blue sky, descending in a swirl of dust and noise that sent birds scattering for miles. 2 rangers rappelled down before it even touched ground, carrying equipment and water, their faces tight with the kind of urgency that comes from hearing desperation over a radio. James recognized Sarah, a veteran wildlife vet with hands that could calm the most terrified animal, and Marcus, younger but competent, trained in large mammal emergency response. They took in the scene with professional speed. The injured calf, the protective mother standing over it, James sitting against the boulder, looking like he'd aged 10 years in an afternoon. "Talk to me," Sarah commanded, already moving toward the calf with her medical kit. "Baby elephant, trapped in rocks, freed it maybe 2 hours ago. That leg sprained or fractured, can't tell which. Severe dehydration. Shock. Mother arrived about 40 minutes ago." James's voice caught. "We were surrounded by lions, 7 of them." Marcus's eyes widened. "Lions? Where?" "Gone. They left." James looked at the mother elephant, who was watching Sarah's approach with obvious tension, ears slightly forward, trunk raised in warning. "But she won't let you near the baby. Not without—" He stood up, his legs shaking, and walked slowly toward the mother elephant. She watched him calm, that massive eye tracking every movement. James raised his hand, palm out, then gently touched her trunk. "It's okay," he said softly. "They're here to help, like I helped. I promise." The mother elephant studied him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she stepped aside, just enough to give Sarah access to the calf while keeping herself between her baby and the strangers. Sarah knelt beside the injured elephant, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. 4 line for fluids and electrolytes. Gentle examination of the leg. Temperature check. The calf whimpered but didn't struggle, perhaps too exhausted for fear. "Hairline fracture," Sarah announced. "Could be worse, much worse. The splint you made probably saved it from breaking completely." She looked at James with newfound respect. "Good work." Marcus was setting up a portable X-ray while Sarah continued her examination. The mother elephant watched everything with an intensity that made it clear she was memorizing faces, cataloging actions, determining who was friend and who might be threat. "We're going to need to transport them both," Sarah said, injecting antibiotics into the calf's shoulder. "The baby can't walk on this, and mother won't leave baby. Transport how?" Marcus asked. "That's a 6-ton elephant and a 300-pound calf. The helicopter camped ground transport. We'll bring in the truck." Sarah pulled out her own radio, calling back to the station with a string of precise instructions. While she coordinated, she explained to James, "There's a rehabilitation facility about 30 miles north. They specialize in elephant care. We'll take them there, stabilize the baby, reunite them with their herd once the calf can walk." James felt a strange pang at those words. Reunite them with their herd. Of course that was the goal. That was what should happen. But some irrational part of him had started thinking of them as this mother and baby who he'd fought beside, bled beside, nearly died beside. The mother elephant suddenly went very still, her trunk rising high, sampling the air. Her ears flared wide and she released a low rumble that vibrated through the ground. Marcus began, then they all heard it. Multiple trumpets in the distance. Deep, resonant calls that echoed across the savannah. Growing closer. The herd, Sarah breathed. She's calling them! Over the ridge came elephants. Not 2 or 3, but an entire extended family group. A dozen adults and several more youngsters, moving together with the kind of coordinated purpose that spoke of deep social bonds. The matriarch leading them was ancient, her tusks worn smooth, her hide mapped with scars from decades of survival. They descended into the ravine, an impossible sight, this parade of giants flowing down the slope like gray water. The mother elephant trumpeted again, a sound of greeting and relief. The newcomers surrounded her and the calf immediately, trunks reaching out to touch, to reassure, to reconnect. James and the other rangers backed away, giving them space. This was something beyond human intervention. This was family. The matriarch approached the injured calf, her trunk exploring the small body with infinite gentleness. She rumbled softly, a sound that seemed to calm not just the baby but every elephant present. Then she turned her attention to James. She walked toward him with slow deliberation, each step measured. Sarah grabbed James's arm, pulling him back, but he shook his head. "It's okay," he said, though his heart was hammering. "I think it's okay." The matriarch stopped a few feet away. She was even larger than the mother, her presence commanding absolute respect. Her trunk reached out, moving past James's raised hand to touch his face, his chest, his hands. Reading him. Understanding him through that remarkable organ that served as hand and nose and communication device all at once. Then she wrapped her trunk gently around his wrist and pulled him forward. Sarah gasped. Marcus reached for his tranquilizer gun. But James went willingly, letting himself be led into the circle of elephants. The matriarch brought him to the mother and calf, positioning him beside them. And then every elephant in the herd reached out with their trunks to touch him, all at once. A blessing. An acknowledgement. A thank you rendered in a language older than words. James stood frozen, overwhelmed, tears streaming down his face as he was surrounded by these magnificent creatures who somehow knew exactly what he'd done, who recognized sacrifice and bravery even across the species barrier. The moment lasted forever and no time at all. Then the matriarch released him, stepping back, and the herd began to organize themselves for travel. The mother elephant positioned herself beside her calf while 2 of the largest adults flanked them protectively. Sarah moved forward again, this time accepted by the herd. She finished her medical work quickly, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, splinting the leg properly, while the elephants waited with remarkable patience. When she was done, she looked at James. The truck will be here in an hour, but I don't think we're going to need to sedate them for transport. I think, she laughed. Slightly incredulous, I think they're going to cooperate. I've never seen anything like this. The mother elephant walked over to James one more time. She stood before him and he felt so small, so impossibly small and fragile. She touched his face with her trunk, gentle as a whisper. "You're welcome," James said again, his voice rough. "Take care of that baby," she rumbled, soft, warm, the elephant equivalent of a promise, and returned to her calf. Over the next hour, the truck arrived, a massive specialized vehicle with a loading ramp designed for large wildlife. The rangers worried it would be a struggle, that they'd need sedation after all, that the elephants would panic at the mechanical roar and steel smell. Instead, the matriarch examined the truck, determined it was safe, and led the way up the ramp. The mother followed with her calf supported between 2 other adults. The entire herd loaded themselves with more organization than most human groups could manage. James stood watching, exhausted and sunburned and dehydrated enough that Sarah kept forcing electrolyte drinks into his hands. Marcus was filming everything with his phone, already muttering about how no one was going to believe this. Before the truck departed, Sarah pulled James aside. "What happened out there?" "Really happened. Because that elephant, that mother, she looks at you like you're part of her herd." James shook his head, lacking words adequate to the experience. "We needed each other. The lions came, and we were both trying to protect that baby, and somehow," he gestured helplessly, "somehow we understood each other." Sarah nodded slowly. "There are going to be reports to file, statements, probably interviews. This is James. This is the kind of story people need to hear. Human and elephant standing together against predators? Choosing cooperation over fear? That matters." He knew she was right. But part of him wanted to keep it private, sacred, his alone. That moment of connection in the ravine felt too big, too profound, to be reduced to paperwork and news segments. The truck engine rumbled to life. Through the metal slats, James could see the mother elephant looking back at him. Their eyes met one final time across the distance that was growing between them, and he raised his hand in farewell. She raised her trunk in response, a gesture so deliberate, so clearly intentional, that even Marcus stopped filming to stare. Did she just... Marcus began. Yeah, Sarah said quietly.
She did.
The truck pulled away, disappearing into the heat shimmer of the savannah, leaving James standing in the ravine that had been a battleground, a hospital, a meeting place between species. The ground was scarred with lion tracks, elephant footprints, his own boot marks. Blood on the stones, strips of his torn shirt still tied around rocks. Evidence of the impossible. Sarah insisted on examining James before they left, checking his vitals, forcing more water into him, cleaning the scratches on his arms from the thorn bush. You're borderline heat stroke, she scolded. You could have died out here. I almost did, James admitted. Several times. The helicopter ride back was quiet. James sat with his head against the window, watching the landscape scroll beneath them. Somewhere down there, the truck was carrying a family of elephants toward healing. Somewhere down there, a pride of lions had returned to their hunt, their story intertwined with his for one extraordinary afternoon. Back at the ranger station, word had already spread. The entire staff waited outside as the helicopter landed, faces full of questions, concern, excitement. James climbed out on legs that barely held him and was immediately surrounded. Is it true about the lions? Did the mother really stand with you? How did you survive 2 hours in that heat? He answered what he could, but exhaustion was crashing over him in waves now that the adrenaline had finally completely drained away. The station commander, a stern woman named Patricia, who'd been ranging these lands for 30 years, cut through the crowd. Inside, medical check, food, rest, then reports. She looked at James with something that might have been pride or might have been exasperation. You broke about 15 protocols today, James. Yes, ma'am. You also saved a life. Possibly 2. And created the most extraordinary interspecies cooperation event I've ever heard of. She paused. So we'll call it even. But next time you go out alone into poacher territory, you take backup and a working radio. The radio was working. The terrain wasn't. Patricia almost smiled. Get yourself sorted. We'll talk later. The next 3 days passed in a blur of medical recovery, report writing, and interviews. A wildlife documentary team had gotten wind of the story and wanted to film a recreation. A journalist from National Geographic called. The video Marcus had taken went viral online, accumulating millions of views and comments in a dozen languages. But James found himself caring less about the attention than about one question that burned in his mind constantly. How was the calf? On the 4th day, Sarah called him. Want to take a drive? They went north in Sarah's Jeep, the same route the truck had taken. The rehabilitation facility was impressive sprawling enclosures designed to mimic natural habitat, complete with mud wallows, shade trees, and a dedicated team of elephant specialists. Dr. Amara, the head veterinarian, met them at the entrance. She was a compact woman with silver-streaked hair and the kind of calm authority that came from decades working with the world's largest land mammals. Your elephant family is remarkable, she said as she led them through the facility. The calf is responding beautifully to treatment. The fracture was clean, healing well. We'll have the splint off in another week. And the mother? James asked. Protective, devoted. But this is the interesting part, cooperative. She's allowed us to examine the baby, administer medications, change bandages. Almost like she understands we're helping. Dr. Amara glanced at James. Sarah told me what happened in the ravine. About you and her facing down the lions together. James nodded, not trusting his voice. They rounded a corner and there, in a large paddock surrounded by the rest of the herd, was the mother elephant. She was standing in shallow water with her calf, using her trunk to spray cool liquid over the baby's back. The little elephant looked transformed clean, hydrated, already putting weight on the injured leg. Its eyes were bright, curious, full of the playful energy that had been absent in the ravine. The moment James appeared at the fence, the mother's head came up. Her ears flared forward as she began walking toward him. Should I? James started. Stay there, Dr. Amara said. Let's see what she does. The mother elephant approached the fence separating them. She stopped just on the other side, her massive body radiating presence and power. Then her trunk reached over the barrier, extending toward James. He met her halfway. his hand touching her trunk, feeling the warm, textured skin beneath his palm. The mother elephant rumbled, that deep, resonant sound he'd come to recognize as contentment, and gently explored his face, his hair, his shoulders. "Hello again," James whispered. "Look at your baby. You're both going to be fine." The calf had noticed him too. It came splashing out of the water on its healing leg, moving with the clumsy enthusiasm of young things everywhere. It squeezed under its mother's belly to get closer to the fence, trunk reaching out to tangle with James's fingers. James laughed a sound that surprised him, coming from somewhere deep and genuine. "Hey, little one. You remember me?" The calf trumpeted, small and squeaky, and tried to climb the fence. The mother gently pulled it back but allowed the baby to continue touching James through the bars. "Incredible," Dr. Amara breathed. "I've worked with elephants for 25 years. Never seen a wild matriarch allow this kind of interaction with a human. She's treating you like family. We went through something together," James said simply. "That changes things." They stayed there for an hour, James on one side of the fence, the mother and calf on the other. The rest of the herd kept their distance but watched with obvious interest, occasionally rumbling to each other in elephant conversation too complex for human understanding. When it was finally time to leave, James felt that same pang of goodbye he'd experienced in the ravine. The mother elephant seemed to sense it. She reached over the fence one last time, her trunk wrapping gently around his arm. Not pulling, just holding. A connection. "A promise. I'll come back," James told her. "I'll visit. I promise." She held on for another moment, then released him. As he walked away with Sarah and Dr. Amara, he heard the calf trumpet behind him, a sound of farewell and gratitude that echoed across the facility. "When will they return to the wild?" James asked. 2 months, maybe 3, Dr. Amara replied. "Once the calf is fully healed and strong enough for the journey, we'll release them back into their territory, reunite them with their original herd if possible. Back into the wild, where lions still hunted and dangers still lurked and survival was never guaranteed." James felt his chest tighten with worry, but he knew it was right. Elephants belonged in the wild, not in enclosures, no matter how well designed. That night, alone in his quarters at the ranger station, James pulled out his journal, something he'd neglected for months. He began to write, trying to capture what had happened in that ravine. But words felt inadequate. "How did you describe the moment a wild animal chose to trust you? How did you explain standing beside 6 tons of elephant against 7 lions and feeling, despite everything, safe? How did you tell people that in that crucible of heat and fear and desperation, he'd learned something fundamental about the world? That compassion and courage weren't uniquely human traits. That cooperation could transcend evolution. That in the right circumstances, a man and an elephant could look at each other and understand, completely and without question, that they were on the same side." He wrote until his hand cramped, then fell asleep with the journal still open, dreaming of trumpets and roars and the weight of a trunk on his shoulder. 6 weeks later, James received a call at dawn from Dr. Amara. "They're ready," she said simply. "We're releasing them today. Thought you might want to be there." He was in his jeep before the sun cleared the horizon. The release site was chosen with meticulous care 50 miles from where James had found the calf, in territory the herd had frequented before the separation. GPS tracking showed their original herd had been located nearby, moving through their traditional migration routes. The plan was to release James's family group and allow them to naturally reconnect with their larger community. A small convoy assembled. The elephant transport truck, 2 ranger vehicles, Dr. Amara's medical van, and a film crew documenting for conservation records. James stayed back, not wanting his presence to complicate the process. The truck pulled to a stop at the edge of a wide plain dotted with acacia trees and termite mounds. In the distance, the land rose into rocky hills where water flowed year-round. Good elephant country, safe elephant country. The rear gate of the truck lowered with a hydraulic hiss. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the matriarch appeared at the opening, trunk testing the air, evaluating. Satisfied, she descended the ramp with majestic slowness, each foot placed with deliberation. The rest of the herd followed. Adults and youngsters flowing out into the sunshine, immediately spreading out to explore, to touch familiar earth, to be free again. The mother elephant emerged near the end, her calf beside her. The baby was transformed. Where once there had been a terrified, injured creature barely clinging to life, now stood a healthy young elephant, leg fully healed, eyes bright with curiosity. It bounded down the ramp, that particular kind of gallop hop young elephants do, and immediately began exploring everything, trunk investigating grass and stones and air. The mother followed more sedately, but James could see the change in her too. The tension that had defined her in the ravine, that protective hypervigilance, had eased. She looked peaceful, complete. Dr. Amara stood beside James, both of them maintaining careful distance. "Watch," she said quietly. The mother elephant had stopped. Her head came up, ears spread wide, trunk raised high. She was facing James's position 100 yards away, and even at that distance, he could feel the weight of her attention. Then she began walking toward him. "Doctor," one of the rangers said nervously. "Let her," Dr. Amara commanded. "Everyone stay still." The elephant covered the distance with that deceptive speed large animals possess, each stride eating up ground. She came to a halt 10 feet from James, close enough that he could see the individual lashes around her eye, the pattern of wrinkles in her skin, the way dust clung to the moisture around her mouth. They looked at each other. Human and elephant. Survivor and survivor. The mother stepped closer, closer, until her massive forehead nearly touched James's chest. Then she wrapped her trunk around him, not roughly, not aggressively, but in what could only be described as an embrace. James's arms came up automatically, his hands resting on her trunk, and he let himself be held by this magnificent creature who had every reason to fear humans and every reason to trust them. Who had chosen trust. "Thank you," he whispered, knowing she couldn't understand the words but hoping she understood the emotion behind them. "Thank you for letting me help. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for being exactly who you are." The elephant rumbled, a sound he felt in his bones, in his heart. She held him for another moment, then gently released him and stepped back. Her trunk touched his face one last time, his forehead, his cheek, his lips, as if memorizing him. Then she turned and walked back toward her calf, who had been watching the entire exchange with evident interest. But she wasn't done. The mother elephant positioned herself beside her baby, and then deliberately, clearly, unmistakably she pushed the calf forward. Toward James. The little elephant stumbled, confused, then understood. It trotted forward on its perfectly healed leg until it stood before the human who had saved its life. The calf's small trunk reached up, touching James's hand, his arm, his face, learning him, remembering him. And James knelt down, bringing himself to the elephant's level, letting this young life explore and understand. "You're going to be okay," he said softly. "You're going to grow up strong and safe. And maybe when you're older, you'll remember that not all humans are dangerous. That's," his voice caught, "some of us think you're worth protecting." The calf wrapped its trunk around his wrist, holding on with surprising strength. Then it released him and bounded back to its mother, who touched it reassuringly. The mother elephant looked at James one final time. She raised her trunk high, a salute, a goodbye, a promise, and trumpeted. The sound carried across the plain, powerful and clear, announcing her return. And from the hills in the distance came answering calls. The original herd, coming to reunite with their lost family. James watched as his elephants walked away, the calf staying close to its mother's side, the matriarch leading them toward their future. Other rangers were quiet, moved by what they'd witnessed. Even the camera crew had stopped filming, just watching with the kind of awe that defies documentation. As the elephants crested a small rise and disappeared from view, James felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Completion. The knowledge that he'd been part of something larger than himself, something that would ripple forward in ways he couldn't predict or measure. Dr. Amara approached him. "She remember you? Elephants never forget, that's not just a saying. It's neuroscience. Years from now, if you encountered her in the wild, she would know you." "Will I ever see them again?" James asked. "Maybe, maybe not, but does it matter?" She smiled. "You gave that baby a chance at life. You stood with that mother when everything said run. You proved that the line between human and animal isn't as solid as we pretend." "That's not nothing, James. That's everything." Over the following months, reports filtered back through the ranger network. The elephants had successfully reunited with their herd. The calf was thriving, growing, playing with other youngsters. The mother had integrated back into the complex social structure, taking her place as one of the respected matriarchs. and just occasionally rangers monitoring the herd would report something unusual. The mother and calf would stop in certain areas, seemingly for no reason. They would stand still, trunks raised, as if listening for something. Or waiting for someone, always near places where humans worked, where rangers patrolled, where the scent of human compassion still lingered. James kept his promise. Once a month, when duties allowed, he would drive out to the territories where the herd roamed. He never approached, never interfered, just watched from a distance through binoculars, checking that they were safe, healthy, alive. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes the mother elephant would stop whatever she was doing. Her head would come up, ears would flare, and she would look directly toward his hiding place, as if she knew, as if she could sense him across the distance. A year after the rescue, James was leading a training session for new rangers, teaching them tracking and wildlife behavior. He told them the story of the ravine, the trapped calf, the lion attack, the moment the mother had chosen to stand with him instead of flee. The point, he concluded, is that wild animals aren't just biological machines following instinct. They think, they feel, they make choices. And if we're respectful, if we're brave enough to see them as equals rather than resources or threats, sometimes they choose to trust us. That's the privilege and responsibility of being a ranger. One young trainee raised her hand. Did you ever see them again? After the release? James smiled. I see them all the time. Not always up close. But yes, I see them. And do they remember you? He thought about that question carefully. Remembered the trunk wrapped around his waist, the gentle touch on his face, the way the mother had deliberately brought her calf to say goodbye. Remembered standing in a ravine with lions closing in and an elephant beside him, fighting for the same cause. He said finally, I think they do. I think they remember exactly. That night, James drove out to the plains one more time, not looking for anything specific, just being present in the land he'd sworn to protect. The stars overhead were brilliant in their multitudes, the kind of night sky that makes you feel both insignificantly small and vitally important at the same time. A sound carried on the wind, distant, unmistakable, an elephant's trumpet. James smiled and drove toward it, not expecting to find anything, just following the sound because it felt right. And there, silhouetted against the starlight near a stand of acacia trees, stood a herd of elephants. He stopped the jeep, killed the engine, and sat in silence. Too dark to make out individuals, too far to approach. Just presence and counterpresence, human and elephant sharing space under the African sky. One of the elephants, larger than the others, protective stance suggesting matriarchal status, lifted her trunk and called out. Not a warning, not a threat, a greeting. A recognition. James raised his hand in the darkness, knowing she couldn't see the gesture, but making it anyway. I'm still here, he said into the night. Still watching over you. Still keeping my promise. The elephant rumbled, a sound that carried across the distance, and James felt it in his chest like a second heartbeat. Then the herd moved on, gray shadows melting into the darkness, leaving him alone with his memories and his purpose. He sat there for a long time, thinking about how a single afternoon in a ravine had changed everything, had taught him that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite it. That the most important bridges we build are the ones between different kinds of consciousness, different ways of being in the world. That sometimes when everything else falls away, you discover that a human and an elephant standing together against the darkness aren't really that different after all, both just trying to protect what matters. Both just choosing hope over fear. Both just doing what nature designed them to do. Survive, connect, and pass something meaningful forward to the next generation. James started the jeep and drove back toward the station, but he carried the night with him, the stars, the trumpet call. The knowledge that somewhere out there, an elephant who should have died was alive. A baby who should have been lost was found. A mother who should have been alone had stood with an ally when it mattered most. And that, James thought as he parked the jeep and climbed the stairs to his quarters, that was worth everything. Every risk, every moment of terror, every impossible choice. Because in the end, what defined a life wasn't the absence of danger but the presence of love. And love, he'd learned, didn't belong exclusively to humans. It belonged to any creature capable of looking at another being and thinking, I will stand with you. I will fight for you. I will not leave you behind. The next morning, James woke to find a message from Dr. Amara. Herd passed by the facility last night. Mother and calf both healthy. She stopped and looked toward my office for a long time before moving on. I think she was saying hello. Or maybe thank you. Thought you should know. James smiled, put the phone down, and went to start his day. Patrols to run. Territories to monitor. Wildlife to protect. A promise to keep. And somewhere out there in the vast African wilderness, an elephant and her calf walked together through the grasslands, surrounded by family, safe and whole and free. That night, the mother elephant didn't just defend her baby. She reminded the world that some bonds transcend biology, that courage exists in every heart that chooses to love, and that the greatest stories aren't about conquering nature, they're about understanding it. And sometimes, just sometimes, becoming part of it.